Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Biggerplate webinar. My name is Liam Hughes. I am the founder of Biggerplate, and it's a pleasure to welcome you today to the very first of our Software Spotlight webinars. I'm delighted to have with us today Ashley Marron, who's the CEO of MindGenius, coming to us today from sunny Scotland. Ashley, can I just check with you? Are you there? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Liam, we're all good here. Good to go.
Great. So I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'll hand over to Ashley, who's going to give us a little bit of an insight into the latest version of MindGenius, probably a little bit of the background of MindGenius, which has been around for a very long time, a real sort of leader in the mind mapping sector for a very long time. So we're delighted to have Ashley on to give us an update and tell us what's new. Great to see so many of you on the call today already. Please feel free to post your questions to Ashley or feedback anytime throughout the session. You won't interrupt him, and it'll mean when we get to the Q&A at the end, I'll have lots of questions lined up for Ashley ready to go. So firstly, let me just cover the housekeeping before we get started, as it says there. So Ashley's going to talk for roughly sort of 30 to 40 minutes, maybe shorter. And then we're going to hopefully have plenty of time for your questions. And again, you please feel free to cover pretty much anything. The only thing I would ask you not to get into on this call, just because it's not really the right forum for it, if you have questions around pricing and sales questions, they are much better to pick up directly with the MindGenius team themselves. I'm sure there will be some people who will be interested. But if you can keep your questions in this forum about really the features, the functionality, and the effort overall for MindGenius, that would be great. As I said earlier, please feel free to use the questions panel at any time throughout the session, so we've got a good collection of questions ready for Ashley at the end. And then in case you do have to duck out at any point, or in case you want to revisit any parts after this webinar, the recording will be made available usually within 24 hours once we've just got it chopped and changed to then upload onto the various platforms for that. So I think that's pretty much all the housekeeping I need to do for today. If anybody on the call just wants to let me know, apart from Ashley, that you are able to hear and see the screen okay, that's always useful to know. And if anyone wants to let me know where they're coming from in the world today, that's always interesting to know as well. But in the meantime, then I'm going to just really introduce Ashley, which I've kind of done already. Ashley's the CEO of MindGenius. MindGenius, for those of you who are not familiar, is one of the most long-established software vendors in the market. We have had the pleasure of working with them now for many years. There's an amazing selection of mind map templates and examples shared on Biggerplate in MindGenius format. So we're really very privileged to have Ashley with us today to give us some perspectives on the latest version of MindGenius, which I think I'm right in saying released only a week or two ago. So Ashley, I'm going to give you the presenter rights and hand over to you. So you should just see a little pop-up now on your side.
Yep, I've got it there.
And if you take that, that means we see your screen. So actually, I'm going to mute myself in just a moment. First of all, thank you so much for coming on and agreeing to sort of just share some perspectives on MindGenius, what's new, what you guys have been working on. It's been a busy couple of years for you guys, and lots to talk about in many different areas. So I'm going to hand over to you, and I'll come back on when we're ready for questions.
Okay, that's great, Liam. Obviously delighted to be here, and thanks very much for the invite to feature on the Spotlight webinar. As you said, we've had a working relationship from probably 2001, so it's been a long time in terms of the MindGenius product. In later years, and particularly the last two, we have focused on developing our cloud offering of Barvas, which has probably grabbed most of the headlines for the business in the last 2 years, but our core product and our flagship product was the desktop, and we decided last year to focus on building on top of the feature-rich product that we have, and try and take MindGenius 2018 to the next level. We learned an awful lot from the Barvas product itself, and it's always nice to tell folk that you're alive and kicking. So we particularly went away from a numbering sequence of version 6. Version 7 wouldn't have meant a lot to anybody in particular. So that's why we've gone with the 2018, and we've sort of brightened up our logo and put a bit more color in our corporate blue life that was there in the past. In terms of what I'm going to try and show you today, in terms of the demonstration, is to focus in on some of the real key features that we've brought about in terms of the 2018 release. We've freshened up the look and feel of the product. because our last version was probably formally released a couple of years ago, although we've had very small releases in between. We just felt there was a need to align it with the Microsoft Office current look. Equally, because of the big depth of functionality that we've got in a product that's 14 or 15 years old, we really had to start surfacing it, making it one-click usable for the users that we had, and start to begin a journey that makes the use of the product even more simple than it historically been. One of the things we learned with the use of the Barvas product was we have a whole range of people that use MindGenius. We have a lot of folk that use it for the front-end mapping. We could have a whole load that then take it from the map all the way through to the typical project Gantt and WBS. And we felt that there was an ability to add different dynamic views. So we could add Kanban task boards that gave you an ability to look at resources and management and priority. That really adds a bit more power to the product than we've ever had. Because we think if you can view information at different ways, depending upon where your project's at, it probably lets you get the job done an awful lot better. To cater for the project management people, we've equally expanded on some of the capability and delivered some real fantastic features that allows you to snapshot and overlay the product or the project status so you can see where it's at. So excited to show you that. And we've also added in Solution Finder, which is our take on how you get chaos out of a brainstorm. We obviously love brainstorms. The mapping is the front end of what we do. But we were equally wary that some teams need guidance, they need help. Is there a better way of getting them used to the process? Some folk are put off when they see a map and a map view initially. Could we do something that was slightly different? So excited about that. And as ever, the world's moved on in the last 15 years since we had a perpetual license model. So we've had to expand our licensing to do both perpetual and licensing. So I'll cover that, and I'll cover cost to some extent at the back end, but primarily it's about product and show you that today. In terms of where we're at, the look and feel of MindGenius has very much moved on. The ribbons once again have a cleaner look, and we've revamped the way that the initial map's drawn to give it a bit more of a slicker look and slicker feel. This happens to be a very simplistic one in terms of a map somebody could do for a customer service visit, but I picked it really just to show the type of imagery that we now have in the product, and equally the picture gallery on the left hand side. We've removed the folder structures. We've sort of learned from the iPhone and the way folk really pick and attach images in a social sense, that it's a lot easier if we can make it one click away from what you want to do. So the picture gallery has been enhanced. There's even more enhancement coming as we go through the subsequent releases. So an awful lot more capability and probably an attractiveness to folk that really like the imagery and the mapping. We've also revamped completely all the templates. We do have 600,000 users all the way around the world, and we have a strong relationship with a number that really wanted us to put a bit more best practice in place, and best practice that would guide them through a product in terms of how they could go about a particular task. So in the project management domain as such, right, there is now a complete set of project templates that would let you, if you didn't know what to do or you just wanted a starter for 10, to let you build from a project scope statement all the way through to a WBS. We're equally aware that lots of folk use the mapping and all the many formats that we have in the product to be able to do the simplistic views of organization charts. So we've included imagery and templates to make you think about whether that's applicable to your organization, and maybe think a bit more about using the mapping and the reporting in a slightly different way. We equally accept that under WBS and for those heavy in the and the piece in terms of wanting to do the whole project management piece, it would be great to be able to maybe lighten up your day somewhat. You look at some products out there, and there's an ability to add a background image if that's what rocks your world. So it's always been there. We've probably just never really displayed it. We've never given folk examples of what you can do with it. So you can have a WBS, and you can put a background into any of the projects or the maps that you particularly want. If you look at generally in terms of WBSs and new product development, there's equally a simpler way to go look at it and simplify from product development all the particular aspects that you would look at to get a new product to market. So we think we've taken the best of what's been out there with our customers, and better sorted them, better shared them, and better let folk be able to start with what they wanted to do. In terms of the dynamic views, one of the areas that we always like to do initially within MindGenius is we sort of use the tool to death ourselves. So this is a version of a real map that we pulled together when we were trying to get our new website up for 2018. It started off in the traditional format with the mapping and the activities, and then we developed it into a what would be considered a full-blown sort of project view. So if you simply click, the magic of the Gantt allows you to see all the detail of where the project's at. We always had an ability to link into one of the strengths of MindGenius, which is use the Map Explorer on the left-hand side. So if there are particular aspects of the plan that you want to look at, whether it be training, resources, pricing, you can subdivide your grant, the Gantt view. So it sort of joins up that part of the process in terms of the projects. As I mentioned slightly earlier, one of the fantastic features we've put in now is an ability to record a snapshot in terms of where your project's at. So if I wanted to take a snapshot today, okay, I can record a snapshot of the 3rd or the 5th. I can pick whichever color I'm going to use against it and then maintain it as such. And that's me got a record today. Now, where this feature comes into its own is this was the project when we first put it together at a certain moment in time, right? And we took a snapshot at that point on the 1st to the 4th, right? So the overlay that you're now seeing, the red is the 1st to the 4th, right? And what you can relatively easily see is what actually happened against what you had planned, and the consequence effects of maybe being late on some of the tasks. So really great for one of these sort of regular weekly meetings or monthly meetings that teams might have. There's no debate about what we agreed to do and what we've actually done, but equally it gives you informed information for you to be able to make the right decisions moving forward and make sure that your focus is right. In terms of some of the simplicity we've added into the product, previously it was very difficult to set a milestone, so now you can pick a task name, set a milestone, and it's instantly created. So what we're trying to do is to just generally make life easier for folk that want to manage the detail of a project management. One of the benefits that we did see from using it ourselves and probably our experience on Barvas, right, was the views and the way that you can use that information. Right? If you look at how a project typically progresses, you'll do all the pre-planning traditionally in your map view. You'll do your Gantt, you'll plan it. Okay, but then you've actually got to get the job done. What we've decided to do is to create a number of dynamic views. So for the same example that I've literally shown you, right, you can take a view of the resources. Okay, so these are all the people that are working on the project, dependent upon the number of tasks they've got. So you have a level of leveling of work should you want to do it. I could literally take the project management tasks that's under Rachel, okay, and move it to me. Now the clever part of what we do is any change that you see on one view is automatically reflected in all the views. Should I now go and look at the Gantt? Should I go look back at the initial map? Right, the task that was under Rachel will have moved under me. So what we found as we ran it, right, the mapping at the front end was great for the planning. The Gantt gave us the oversight of what we wanted to do. But when it came into, and how is the team working that week, we tended to use the dynamic views to move the tasks all the way through to completion. The views have many ways of looking at the same resource. So that's exactly the same information organized by categories, whether it be hard, moderate, or easy. You can simply add more categories. You can do everything else you could do within the tool to go look at how you're doing. You can see which tasks have no priority, which ones are unassigned. Once again, all the drag and drop moves, and focusing if you wanted on the high. But the one that really works in terms of movement is look at the status of a project. Right, so you could see what was in progress, what was completed, right? Anything that we called waiting on something else that became a blocker. So our meetings became massively focused. Right? Everybody had access to the information. They were updating it from one meeting to the next, right? And you can really focus in and sort of get stuff done, which is probably one of our core principles generally that we've ever wanted to do. Okay. In terms of the solution finder, and folk asked me what solution finder is and why have you decided to incorporate it within the tool. I used to go out with Jamie and visit a number of customers, and we often came across teams to ask them how they use the product, right? And they would simply go, well, I'm just not really a mapper. It's not really for me, so I tend not to get involved. And we taught them through, yeah, but if it helps you solve a problem, maybe there's something that you can go do that gets them into the process without actually realizing that they're mapping and catching the rest. So what we've decided to do was, I just need to get something up here. Hold on, give me literally 2 seconds. Right. Is add solution finder in. So I could try and explain this with a demo, and I'm going to pick up the demo at the point, but to give you a better oversight, the video that we've got running on the website, which some of you might have seen, probably better gets across what we're trying to achieve. So let me just run that.
Solution Finder is a new MindGenius feature that brings a new level of innovation to solving problems and planning projects. When your team is first starting to think about a problem, a project, or any initiative, Solution Finder helps make your thinking more clear, more creative, and more complete. We call it guided brainstorming, and it has many different uses. Solution Finder guides your team through answering several questions that are designed to help you think about everything needed for a successful outcome, including things you might not otherwise consider. For example, you can start with establishing the facts. What's most important to know before you begin figuring out what you'll do? What are some alternative ways of solving the problem or planning the project? What could go wrong? What are the worst case scenarios? How does everybody on the team feel about this initiative? What's your gut saying? This is important too. The feelings of team members have a lot to do with the potential for success and for which proposed solutions will get support from the full team. What are the first actions your team needs to take to make it all happen? When you're done with your guided brainstorming, you can convert your thinking into a mind map, and then you can further refine how you'll solve the problem, plan the project, or engage with the initiative. Solution Finder guides you and your team to think more creatively, focus on the important things, and get successful outcomes. It won't make decisions for you, but it helps you see more clearly everything you need to consider before you make your decisions.
Okay. Okay, 2 seconds. Right, brilliant. Right. So that really sets the scene. So what we're trying to do is, and we're guilty of it. We brainstorm an awful lot. It tends to be chaotic. Right? We tend to get to the end game, right? But we maybe would have benefited from somebody taking us through a structure in terms of how you could get to a better result and make sure you've looked at it from many perspectives. Right. So Solution Finder sits within the tools, right, and literally when you now go into Solution Finder, it'll trigger up. So I'm going to build down from increase sales. Right, and that's basically in probably a different output screen, right? So the way that we've built the question sets is we believe there are a number of different scenarios that folk are wanting to look at in terms of looking at alternatives, identifying solutions, initial ideas. Now, how you would view them in terms of the perspectives, right, could very well be differently. So we've pre-populated a number of guidance steps to basically help somebody guide a team through the particular problem scenario that you're after. Right, so it's very key that you have somebody that understands what they're trying to do. They tend to have the blue perspective, as we call it. So they set the main facts of what's trying to be achieved. They're very much trying to keep it on track, and ultimately they're trying to get the team to the next level. Dependent upon which set you pick, then there's a number of questions and orders that the question set will take you through. If you want to give yourself more space, you can hide the side panel. The questions still appear at the top, and you're basically then taking your team through the number of questions, getting them all to think from the same perspective at the same time on a problem. It puts a bit more structure to those brainstorms where you can get a dominant person that's particularly coming from only their perspective. If you could get them all looking for what's the creative solution, okay, what are the facts that we've got, it would work in terms of an output. In terms of what we then find is working with the team and building on the one that's there. You're allowed to color code the questions. You can understand exactly where somebody's come from. And you've got them in a situation where it's a bit more of a posted pad presentation to them, so that they can go and see where the information is at. Right. Once you've got to this stage, and in this particular occasion, there's 4 or 5 items that we've decided to do, you can simply take them into a question-centric map that allows you then to go and look at the information aligned with the questions that you asked, right? And you're then into the full power of MindGenius. So you then still have an ability, right, to go to the other views that you particularly want, right? So you could still have a choice to go to Gantt, right. Should you particularly want to, right? You can once again focus in on just the last piece. We can start adding in, you can start moving the dates of when everything would happen. Right? You can start adding in resources. Right? You then have an ability to go look at the views. Right? Once again, you're given guidance as how you can set it up. Everything that's been agreed from the blue perspective at the end of the meeting currently sits in an unassigned category, and you basically start putting folk against it. So depending on what you want to do with the information, we're trying to give you more power, more ability to move teams through the process, and ultimately just get stuff done. And in terms of the final piece, right, in terms of pricing, we do have a subscription-based model. It's similar. It's consistent with what we've had historically. The perpetual model, rather. So you can still buy a MindGenius desktop license for $245. It's competitive in the market space, and it has a functionality that knocks Microsoft Project out the park, if I'm being completely honest. We're equally aware that some folk like subscription, so there's an alternative for that, which is a year one purchase and subsequent years. Our plan is to still maintain the interest we have in education, but we've left the education version sitting at version 6 because it now gives us some clarity between our two offerings, so that if somebody really wants all the capability with Solution Finder dynamic views, it's very clean, they would buy 2018. And equally, education in terms of the front end of what they're trying to do is still an excellent version for those at that stage. So that's us. We're delighted with what we've done. Our plan moving forward is to release again in terms of the MindGenius desktop in around the 6 months time scale, with then a 2019 branded release at some point next year. But what you'll see is going on a journey of lifting the information, making it more usable for folk, and getting them to get to it quicker. The Barvas product, so folk are aware, continues to be in development. We've now grown to a size, we have 2 dev teams, which is absolutely fantastic. So if anybody's working on Barvas, they'll see that moving on. File attachments is the next key feature that's going into that. So pretty excited, to be honest. I think we've done a great job with the flagship historic product. We've got a great roadmap with the new product, and we definitely have 2 different audiences and 2 different types of people and organizations that want to interact with us. So that's really me Liam, for the product demo and that side of everything we're trying to achieve here. So I'm happy to hand over to you for questions and take whatever comes.
That's great. Ashley, firstly, can I just check that you can hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Great. So actually, firstly, thanks very much. It's really interesting not only to see the, I guess, the features and functionality as it's been lifted and improved, but also it's always, from my side, particularly interesting as well. And I think for users to hear some of the thinking and sort of feedback that's gone into these changes and these updates. So I'm going to just sort of kick off a little bit of a Q&A with a slight tangent, perhaps, to the Barvas experience over the last few years.
Yes.
MindGenius as a product, as you said at the start, has kind of been quiet in development terms for, I think, probably a year and a half, 2 years. And in that time, you've been doing huge amounts with the Barvas product. And obviously, it's a very different kind of offering, the online and all sorts of stuff. I'm really interested in what were the sort of transferable bits of learning. What were you able to take from 3 years of work on Barvas and sort of bring into the MindGenius product update? What did you learn and sort of take from that you were able to bring across for this release?
Okay, a couple of things. One was when you're looking at an online tool, you really have to make the information very accessible in terms of the one-click option. So when you're working between 2 products, we suddenly realized we had massive functionality in MindGenius, but probably a lot of it was buried. Most folk probably didn't know all the options and everything they could do. So we certainly wanted to bring that across. But probably more importantly, what Barvas taught us was the many windows of view that you can get on information. Varies as you move through a project. So where Barvas came into its own was it had a Kanban board, a task board that was massively popular with those that use that product. And we knew we had the information in effect captured within the MindGenius desktop product, right? But it wasn't in a way that somebody could go use. So we really took that back and went, okay, we're giving folk mapping, we're giving them the Gantt, right? Let's manage the day-to-day in a UI friendly way that everybody buys into, regardless of the fact that you came at it from being a mapper or a PM. So that was the learnings for us.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've found very interesting around the Barvas and now the MindGenius sort of update is this idea that's really sort of clearly taken hold with you guys is there are lots of different views of the same information. And you and I have had conversations in the past, Ashley, and there's a couple of questions coming in. Thank you all for your questions so far. Please keep them coming. There's a couple of questions here around people who are resistant to mapping. And you and I have had conversations where we've kind of, I think, been agreeing on the fact that not everything belongs in a mind map. And a mind map is not the tool for everything. And I think what's really interesting and powerful with what you've presented here is you've really sort of you've got a real sort of end-to-end process here in the solution finder sort of brainstorming up front that then falls into a mind map that then might get fleshed out and turn into a Gantt view that can then be broken down into task view. So this idea that not everyone is a mapper is something I think we've really got to acknowledge, and clearly you're trying to cater for. A couple of questions here around that have been from David's got a question. He says, how do you deal with people that are resistant to mind mapping? And I'm interested to hear your answer, Ashley, because I think I would know what your answer might be. But what would you say to that? How would you help people if they are resistant to the mapping aspect?
That's really what we've tried to put into the solution finder piece. You have to. Some folk get frightened by the map and the way the question set's presented to them, and the fact it's all linked and all makes sense. So it can be off-putting. So we would tend to try and work with teams like that, probably without the software product initially. It's just about, let's talk about a problem that your business has, okay, and let's capture what your ideas are, how you would want to go about it. So we think with the solution finder, we've got a better way of engaging with the doubters, get them involved in literally seeing the information. And what you see in solution finder is you see or everything captured in one space. A map can very quickly get big and unwieldy and throw folk off in terms of a focus, because there's so much information. So we think to just get them simply working on as blank a piece of paper as you can, hopefully take them through it, let them see the benefit of how it works, and bring them along the journey of it's literally looking at information in just a different way.
Yeah. And I think one of the other sort of key aspects that, I know you and I have talked about in the past is in terms of people who might be resistant to mapping, is don't try and force them to do mapping. Yeah. give them these alternative views of the same information, see where their preferences lie. Do they prefer the task view or the Gantt view? And I guess that's what you guys have really sort of zoned in on now, is you can present this information in really whatever view your audience is going to need, or your client is going to need, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that's vital, Liam. You have to accept that one solution doesn't fit all. So we've got a product that yes, we've got an end-to-end process, but you know what? If you want to start with the Gantt and that's rocks your world, then go start with the Gantt. We're fine.
Yeah. So a couple of things again. Thank you guys for the questions coming in. Some really good stuff in here. A couple of people said, one comment here says they really like it. It's business first thinking. So I think that's quite interesting and probably quite a good endorsement for you there, Ashley. Business first thinking. And I suppose that actually opens up something I sort of noted to myself is MindGenius as a product. If we just set Barvas to the side for a moment, MindGenius as a product has you mentioned your education strength, but it's had a real sort of weight and credibility in the business space for quite a number of years, and particularly with sort of project management as at the heart of it. So what kind of reaction have you been getting to the early sort of users around that kind of heavy business use, and maybe the project managers who might be engaging with this latest version? What's the project manager view of this so far?
The project management, the ones that we work with closely, have loved the product for a number of years. The addition of the snapshot view came from feedback from them that was the thing that they just felt was missing. It was all very well moving from 1 week to the next, and your project was ticking along, but the traceability was the piece that they wanted in. So those that have asked for it have then taken the upgrade to 2018, and the feedback is hugely positive. So no, we're delighted with that space. We've always, as you know, Liam, developed the product we've used it internally to death in terms of the way we run MindGenius, we're very business orientated. We just get stuff done and get it out there. So we're less of the curvy 3D modeled mind mappers, right? And there's a market for them, and good luck to everybody that's in that space. We're much more about just get this business functioning, get it running, sort your problems, and move on. So it's sort of built in the culture of how we run the business, and it's the niche we're in. We're quite comfortable with it, and we leave other spaces to other people, but that's what we're about.
And just to pick up on your comment there around the project snapshots, as you were presenting that, I hadn't sort of taken that particular functionality on board. It really reminded me of a conversation I had with someone a couple of years ago who I think was working at Oracle at the time, and they were saying that one of the issues they had, they were working in IT or the technical part of the business, and they said that one of the issues they had with just their work in general was they had to be able to show the audit of activities and that traceability, as you say, and that function, I'm sure it's not simple, but it seems very simple to just snapshot, here's how the project looked a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I guess that could be ticking off quite a big kind of compliance component for, again, those business users that you're sort of catering for. Was that part of the feedback you were getting that informed that, or was...
Yeah, it was part of the look in just the general traceability. You have an ability to overlay up to 10 snapshots. So you can, should you want, go do that for what would be a typical sort of small, decent project to deliver. And you can take more. You could take a snapshot every day. In terms of a display, we allow you to display up to 10. So no, I think it does. It gives everybody a status of where it's at, and it sort of takes away from those meeting scenarios where somebody says, well, I thought we agreed this, and he said, she said, and all that nonsense that happens. And then folk can then, who cares to an extent, right? This is the situation now. The next week we're going to do all these things and stick to our plan. So yeah, it came from the project management users themselves to ask us to put that feature in. And to be honest, we love it. We used it for our website, and it really focused the team against what we were trying to do week by week.
Nice. So I got a couple of comments here. I asked people while you were speaking how many people were sort of new to MindGenius or experienced users, and you got a bit of a mix in the audience. So thank you everyone for answering that. A couple of people said they're new to MindGenius, and one of the things that struck me as you were talking was it seems you've done a lot in this version to cater for people who may not know where to begin. And in dealing with all the different mind mapping software products and companies that we have over the years, I think this is one of the big areas that remains slightly under focused, if I can put it that way. You've done a lot here with improving the templates, making them really accessible, the solution finder. It seems like you've done a lot in 2018, the product 2018, to help people get started. If they don't know what this software is and they've installed it, it seems you've put a lot of attention onto that. Was that a very conscious decision to try and focus on helping people get started when they're not familiar?
Yes, one of the analysis, we obviously look at the amount of downloads we get and the usage and subsequent purchase. What we find was if folk get started and physically can use it on something relevant to them, it traditionally ends in a sale for us. If folk end up with a blank screen and they're not really sure whether they're going to plan a holiday or go fix something within the office, they tend not to see the value of it. So it's vitally important we try and help them understand the value of the product. We've equally spent a lot of time, if you look at the website or our marketing videos and the one I showed you on Solution Finder, we've done a lot more to try and cope with the fact that nobody has an attention span nowadays longer than 90 seconds. Let's try and get the message across and get you bought into what it could do. Right, so you'll at least go try it on something relevant to you. Right, we're confident once you try it, right, you can end up being a customer with us for years, but we have to get you to try it and use the product in earnest and not just start with a map and put test 1, test 2, test 3. Don't really get what this is all about. So no, that has been a driver.
Yeah, you've got to get people playing with it in something they can associate with and attach some meaning to. So I think you've done a really nice job there in giving people some starting points. I'm going to pick up a couple of the slightly more practical questions that I can see here. One question was on the resource view. They said that looks really amazing.
Yes.
And they were asking, I don't know whether you might want to flick back to it, Ashley, just as we're talking. In the resource view, can you create your own categories? Can you redefine, rename categories and all that sort of stuff? I think that looked brilliant. The ability to say, show me which ones are, I mean, you showed us a few there. That's brilliant. Got it on the screen there. So organize this resource view by priority, by status, and under the categories then, is that where you can sort of define your own and shape them? Yeah,
the whole MindGenius has a massive depth in terms of categories that you can go add to the product. So if I pick on the pick categories, right, these are all the categories you could use. Right, so there's brainstorming, there's reviews, there's impact, there's difficulty that happens to be selected on this occasion. Okay, you can do colors, you can do likelihoods, you can do RAG. Okay, you can rename them. Right, so you can do it 100% to match whatever your process is. It's simply a case of knowing that it's there for you to be able to do it. So yeah, complete flexibility to do everything you want.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things that MindGenius has always been, I think, slightly understated in some regards. I don't think people sometimes quite realize just how much power is under the bonnet with the product. That desktop product has got a lot of features and functionality, and I think maybe what you guys have tried and by the looks of things achieved in this version is making a lot more of that visible but also accessible. You've not crowded people out with all the functionality, but you've maybe made some of it a bit more accessible, easy to see, easy to understand and engage with. So I think the resource view, I think, looks brilliant. I've got a couple of questions here, Ashley, which again, I don't want to push you too much down the route of really fiddly questions, but I've got a couple of people asking about comparability between Windows and Mac. Again, I don't know whether you're able to give us a quick summary of that. Is there differences in the offerings, in the functionality at this stage, or plans around Mac functions?
Yeah, no, the MindGenius 2018 doesn't work on the Mac.
Well, that answers it pretty easily then, doesn't it?
The Barvas product does, which was one of the drivers behind that whole piece. But no, MindGenius 2018 is traditional Windows PC based.
Okay, so that's interesting. So the Barvas sort of direction, that was partly to try and cater for, I guess it sort of makes it platform agnostic, really, doesn't it? Because it's cloud based, browser based. So that's where you'd be directing people in that regard.
Yes, but the difference is, as you said, MindGenius 2018 has 15 years of features and is feature rich. Barvas has 2 years, which is comparatively feature light. So it depends at what stage and journey you're at, and you just have to accept that we're on a journey with all these products, and at some point, who knows when they'll ever get finished in terms of doing everything for anyone. But we can only be honest as to where it is. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I think in broad terms we are starting to see is maybe the slight realization by not just mind mapping software developers, but just developers in all sorts of areas, that trying to cover all of these platforms and all of these devices can actually end up diluting a product across all of them instead of being very strong on just a selection. So I think some strength of conviction in where you're going to be and where you're not going to be, I think is starting to be appreciated a little bit more, rather than the you need to be everywhere approach. I don't know whether, again, that sort of reflects the feedback you've had of, I mean, I'm guessing, but maybe you tell me otherwise, I'm guessing you've got a mainly Windows-based customer base anyway, just because of the traditional strength of the product in that area.
Yes, we do. Traditionally we do, but we obviously have a new customer base through the Barvas account, which, as I say, is device independent. So yeah, through time, I'm sure they'll both grow, and that's probably all that's important to us. Who wins at the end of the day isn't really a factor to us.
So I've got a great opportunity here for you, Ashley, in the questions. Thank you all for the questions. It's really great to see your feedback, some really positive feedback on this, Ashley, as well. I've got a question here from John. Sorry, I realize we've been mentioning Barvas without really explaining it. So you've now got a perfect opportunity, Ashley, to give a quick Barvas explanation. John has asked, what is, or can you spell out Barvas? And he's tried to spell it. It's B-A-R-V-A-S, I think I'm correct in saying. Ashley, maybe you could just give people who are maybe not familiar with Barvas just the headlines so they can go and find out a little bit more, because I think it's one of the most sort of interesting things, and obviously it's been a real focus for you guys for a couple of years. So maybe you could just give us a slight Barvas diversion for a moment.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Slightly. Okay. This is what Barvas is about. Right. It's about joining up in a browser, an ability to manage projects with teams. Right. So it's taken and built upon the principles of MindGenius, right, in terms of the way it would look at tackling the information, right, but it works on a browser, so anything that's got web access can see it. So it's great for teams across the whole, across the globe. Doesn't really matter. We use it a lot internally, and would just go and pick on the marketing plan. Typically, what would happen in terms of Barvas, right, is we'd start much the same way. Right, so that's our 2018 marketing plan. We build it initially as a map. So it would look the same to everybody that would want to see it. You can equally click and get what would be considered the timeline or the Gantt view. We changed the terminology to be timeline, literally just to make it a bit broader. Gantt tends to be a project management sort of piece. You've got all the filters you could have want associated with it. And equally, its strength once again comes to tasks and the ability to move everything through. So this is a live 2018 plan. So in terms of where we're at, we had a Biggerplate advert to do for you, Liam, for the annual report. So that's been published in a way. We've got a week one students plan running, and there's some other stuff running. There's a couple of items that Fiona has with the team for approval. We've got a number of in progress tasks. So works the same way. I've got a blog to write, right? Assuming that I write it, it moves into the approval, and the process flows at the back of it. As this is live, right, I'm literally going to move it back for today. And equally, you can add lists, okay, you can add process, you can do anything you need that you would want in terms of managing the detail at the back of it. So it's very much about taking the core of what sort of MindGenius was about, but managing it very much in the cloud. As you can see from, this is mine. I have 75 projects running on Barvas. Let's see what happens when I put Biggerplate in, right? So I have an ability to search across everything to do with Biggerplate, and these are all the actions that have been ticked or related at some point, right, across the 75 projects. So absolutely ideal for running multiple projects. I have a workspace, right, which is everything here that I've got to do across all those projects put in one view for me. As ever, I've got a number of overdue tasks, right? Not too bad. That's pretty decent for me. And I've got weight under control, so it looks after my personal life too, which isn't a bad thing. So that's probably at a real high level what Barvas is. It's obviously a sort of slicker looking product, just in terms of the look and feel. You have an ability to add documents should you want. This is the next area that the next release is going to come out. It's going to allow you to put actual files and physical documents in place. You can add people in so you get them involved in the project, so all the email messages work. And you have some headline information in terms of what the project details on it and who's working in the team. So brilliant for teams across the whole, across the globe.
That's great, Ashley. And just so you know, you've done a pretty good job there in just a couple of minutes, because the person who asked the question, John, has said, thank you for the Barvas update. I'll follow up on this, as I'm a Mac user and I work with virtual teams. So, John, I'm sure if you reach out to the MindGenius team, they'll be able to set you on the path of Barvas as well. So thanks, Ashley, for that quick summary. That's a very good. Thank you, John, for raising that. We're talking about it without necessarily explaining to people who might not know. So I think the thing with I think I really see now unifying the two products really is that end-to-end capability starting, you guys, Jamie McDonald, one of the long-serving MindGenius geniuses, I would say, said many years ago at one of our conferences, mind mapping is a great upfront thinking tool. And I use that quote all the time. And I think what you see in MindGenius 2018 and the Barvas product is the mapping as part of a bigger set of tools. And I think that's, that's an agenda we've been pushing a long time, is it's not all about the mind map, it's about where does mapping fit. And I think what unifies the product set you've got now is that sort of end-to-end capability. You might not necessarily use the full end-to-end, but you've got it there, both in the desktop product and in the Barvas online product. So what about with the last few remaining minutes, Ashley, if I asked you for a sort of a forward view, if we return just to MindGenius product for a second, yeah. What's the sort of roadmap, the work ahead, without obviously giving away the crown jewels? What areas of focus have you guys sort of identified for the next sort of development cycle for MindGenius?
Okay, well, we're certainly going to build upon the task cards and the views that you've seen here. We've put what we think is a very good offering to start off with, but we think we'll end up putting more sort of capability into that piece of it. We're certainly going to simplify the way of getting the information. As you see, to get the categories at the moment, yes, you can do it. Okay, but you do need to know it's in the pick categories button over here. So what we'll be trying to do is to just eliminate the clicks, I think, in terms of the next stage in the product. We're always looking at the look and feel, which is why we've changed the map view to the latest sort of branch sort of style that we look at. So there'll always be UI to generally be looked at, but I think we'll just want to give it more power to the information, right, and try and make it as easy as possible for folk to engage within their day-to-day business lives that would want to add more and more projects into it.
I think more power to the information is quite a good line on which to perhaps close our session. I think that's it. I think that does sum up quite nicely what I think you guys, as I say, achieved with Barvas was a new way of looking at the same information. I think in MindGenius you've really taken it on another level in terms of what you can do and the power associated with it. I did have one small question I will just loop back round to, Ashley, just again for someone I think is new to MindGenius. Could you just give us again a quick look or just an explanation of the export capabilities from the map? Is that something you could just give us a very quick for someone who's new? If you were just talking about what can MindGenius export to, could you just give us a summary for someone who's unfamiliar?
Yeah, basically it exports into the complete Microsoft Office suite. So you have an ability to take it into Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Visio. So we do have users that would literally work on a map as an example, and then export into PowerPoint, and that's the presentation done. It takes the raw information. You still might find you've got a bit of tidying up to do in terms of imagery and the way you'd want to present it, but any export to Office works. As you get familiar with the product, we will initially take sort of all the information and put it in a Word document, and there's a way of better structuring your maps to get you a better outcome. So that needs to be worked on. We also plan to enhance in the next release some of the options in terms of the Office output, just so that we can make it even easier. You can still do exports to your images, your PDFs, your HTML. We find many folk that use MindGenius as a meeting agenda. Our drive ultimately is to get them working off a PC and all working on it relatively live. But should you want to do a meeting agenda and then send it out in advance as a PDF, then that's available to you. So you should find it can do, once again, put the information in any format you're looking for.
That's great. Thank you for just tidying that. I hope that answered the question for the person who mentioned that earlier. So I think that's probably about our time. I can see we're creeping up to our allotted time. So Ashley, I just have to say a huge thank you for. I know it's always a bit odd and disconcerting to speak to no one on these webinars. So thank you for doing that, and thanks also for just giving us not only the sort of features and functionality, but also some of the thinking and the feedback that's gone into it. I think it's kind of obvious that you've been learning and listening to those 600,000 users over the years, and a lot has gone into this latest iteration. I think the transferable learning between the Barvas and the MindGenius products, I'm sure that's going to go both ways and be a really interesting dynamic to manage for you guys as a business and development going forward. So we obviously wish you all the best with that. So just a huge thank you to you for presenting and sharing this insight with us. And I hope we'll be hearing from you again soon with future updates.
Yeah, no, Liam, thanks for the invite. Enjoyed doing it. No problem.
So that's it for us for today. Thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions that you want to follow up with Ashley, you'll see the details to go visit is mindgenius.com, and they've got a very responsive customer team there that will be happy to help you with any questions about MindGenius or Barvas, of course, if that is more relevant to you. So thank you all for joining and for your questions. The recording, as I said earlier, will be available within usually the next few hours. So for now, that's all from me. Thank you very much for joining us. Take care.